such a good program today. We're all excited about it. We have some really, really cool stuff to go over. We're going to be talking about enrichment, but not only just what is enrichment, we're going to talk about if it's actually harmful for your dog. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, if you notice, we are going to take questions, all right? And there's a Q&A at the bottom of the screen. The absolute best way to get your questions in is to put them in that Q&A. It's much easier for me to see and organize. So we can ask your questions throughout the program. And if we don't get to them, maybe we'll get to them at the end. We'll take some time out to go through the questions that we haven't got to. So we have, of course, Professor Roger Abrantes with us today. We have Michael McManus, and John Larson is going to be there running things behind the scenes to keep all of our technology going the way that it should. So Professor, let's get started. And we always, remember here at the Ethology Institute, we always like to define what we're talking about.
Very good. So, I totally agree with you when you say that we need to define the terms before we use them so that we know what we're talking about. Environment enrichment is everything that stimulates the brain because it's more challenging, both physically and socially. So we alter the surroundings, the physical and social surroundings of the animal to make it more challenging. The animal, well, it can be us as well. We also need to enrich our environment. What happens is that the brains get stimulated in more challenging environments. And those brains, they have a higher rate of synaptogenesis and more complex dendrite arborizations. You don't need to know what it is. So environment enrichment, actually, we know that because we have done lots of tests and experiments. They prevent understimulation, which is one of the causes of a lot of problem behavior. And understimulation can be one causes of what we call maladaptive behavior, which means on the other side, note too that an environment too rich on stimuli may cause overstimulation and detrimental stress rates as well.
Very interesting.
So, a question of balance.
Yes,
go ahead.
Always a question of balance. So we're gonna talk to Michael now. Now, the reason that we decided on this topic for you guys is because Mr. McManus got into a conversation about enrichment, and in particular, foraging behavior, the throwing food on the ground behavior. And I'm personally really interested in this because I don't know about you guys, but that's something I do almost daily with my dogs is throw their food on the ground, whether it's inside or outside. And is that enrichment? Does that teach them to forage?
So I guess you could call it a conversation. That was more of a brawl, but I take parts in some of these online forums, which I probably should avoid, but someone posted a video of their dogs eating kibble out of the grass on the 4th of July. In America, that's our Independence Day. We blast fireworks. And she was proud of how her dogs were able to cope with the stress of the fireworks and just eat food on the ground. She felt it was very enriching and healthy for her dogs to be able to do that. What activities benefit a dog's well-being and which ones harm them?
Right.
Well, Michael, I can tell you one thing. If whatever you do, if it stimulates the brain, if it increases brain activity, then you can consider it environmental enrichment.
So when I take a handful of my dog's food and I throw it out for them and they look for it, that is environmental enrichment. Correct?
Question about that, because in my head, actually, just realizing that I had this intuition about enrichment, that I assumed that enrichment was about the well-being of the animal. So I would have, in my original thinking of enrichment, imagined that actually providing space for the dog to reduce their stimulation level would also be enrichment. But what you're saying is enrichment specifically talks about increasing stimulation. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that makes it sound like enrichment is better and impoverishment is bad, but obviously it's sometimes good to reduce the stimulation level.
Sure. That's what I initially said. If you remember that overstimulation, we can go to the other side and overstimulate. And then an environment which is overstimulating can cause really levels of stress, which will work against the organism. But the thing of throwing the food, that's definitely in environment enrichment, because we are working with one of the necessities, which is food. So we are teaching the dog to use the nose to find food. So
Now,
that is enrichment as well. Now, of
Michael,
course, the objections, sorry, Jessica, the objections are that you teach the dog to go and find food. That is
that's
not,
what I was going to say. So yeah.
that is not true, and it is not my experience at all. Go out to the woods and ask the fox and the coyote and the whatever animals you meet, every birds, worms, all animals are constantly finding food. So there is nothing wrong with finding food. So you can say, oh, but I live in an area where it's dangerous because people put poison out and so on. That's fine. So then don't do it. But from there to say that the activity in itself is wrong and you should never do that, that is absolutely going from that. And that counts me out because I'm not on that boat.
Well, and one of the things that came up with Michael, speaking of that, you know, maybe part of the argument against throwing food on the ground was it teaches them to look for food on the ground and they might eat something dangerous. And a point that Michael made was, well, you know, if you're there, you know, I think chicken bone was what it was. Like, well, if there's a chicken bone on the ground, you're basically teaching your dog to go grab it. And Michael was like, well, I tell my dog not to eat it, and they know that they can't.
Here is when we're dealing with natural behaviors. I hate this idea of teaching the dog to forage. You don't teach the dog how to do a natural behavior.
Right.
We're born knowing how to do that. You teach them where, when, and how. That you can modify it. The dog was born knowing how to forage, and then we decide when they're allowed to forage, when they're not allowed to forage, how to interrupt foraging behavior. That's the training part of it. And you can allow your dog to forage and encourage them to forage while still maintaining absolute control of the dog. I can say
we have a question from Tina, and she's asking about what about the trend towards sensory gardens for dogs? So I don't actually know too much about that. I guess I would imagine it's putting a bunch of scents out for them to find sensory.
So that has sounds, it has smells, it has tactile different surfaces, different colors and sights. Obviously, dogs are somewhat colorblind, but the idea would be as many different sensories being activated in a space as possible. That's what I'm imagining. If I'm wrong, make sure to correct me on this. But yeah. And I think a lot of that kind of stuff is particularly used with puppies. Like there's all this ENS work, the early neurological stimulation that they're doing.
A little bit. I'm going to show you guys something. So I'm sure Professor will have some comments about this one. So, you know, speaking about, you know, foraging and, you know, snuffle mats. These are things that are like created for dogs to basically forage, right? Encourages natural foraging skills. And it's like $40. You know, I just throw food out in the dirt, but hey.
I think to them, probably not. And they're in a way, I sympathize with this because I think you have this natural behavior of foraging that coyotes and foxes and feral dogs participate in. And then you have deviations from that natural, right? So now we're throwing kibble in the grass, which is not a natural behavior because in their natural environment, they don't have kibble. At some point it stops approximating the actual behavior we want. So it's not as good as going out into nature with your dog and letting them hike and sniff and smell things. But it may be the best thing we have to offer if you live in an apartment with a dog or something like that.
True. If you're having to walk your dogs on the sidewalks and they don't really get that much, I suppose.
Sorry, I don't want to attack anyone. And if you guys have a good business with the snuffle mats, continue with that. And I sincerely wish you very good luck with it. I really think it really amazes me what the dog industry can come up with. I look, when I started in the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, 1980s, okay, we didn't have anything at all. So if you see on my first book, I describe many of the devices that you can buy now, but we made them ourselves. The Coke bottle, the plastic one, cut a hole through there, put the treats inside. And instead of snuffle mats, we just threw the food all over, outside, indoors as well. You know, it really amazes me that people can turn everything into a device and charge for that. And it amazes me that dog owners continue buying it. They don't buy courses, they don't buy books, they don't care about knowledge. They want devices. They want things, gizmos.
Sales on your courses actually, and they're half price. They'd probably be just a little bit more than a snuffle mat, right? Especially,
Yeah,
that fancy snuffle.
but I promise you that Kongs and King Kongs or whatever they are called, ping pong, all those things there, and clickers and snuffle mats and all that, it sells much better than our courses.
So Michael brought up the puppy ENS, and I actually did want to talk about that a little bit. I wanted to show you guys this picture. These are just, it's the first page of a Google search for puppy ENS. And it looks like you look at this first picture here, and then you go down to the second row, and it looks like a lot of poking with Q-tips. So I don't know, poking puppies with Q-tips. What do you think, Professor, of trying to stimulating puppies this young? I mean, these are like under 2-week-old puppies here.
But we also did some studies in the 1980s about stimulating the puppy, how much daily contact they needed, so that they would regard humans, differently from if they didn't. And it was very little. Actually, we realized that taking a wolf cub in your hand 5 minutes a day for the first 8 weeks would make the whole difference in the world. Stimulation as well. Yes, we did loads of things. I even went swimming with puppies when they were 6 weeks of age. About that, it prepares them better to cope with the changes in the environment later on in life. But again, we have to be careful not to go to the overstimulating part of it, which causes stress. So again, a question of balance.
See, but I'm not a fan of ENS, and I'll tell you why. It's because people are using it as a replacement for a natural environment. Doing this where the dogs are in one room, a pristine, empty room of the house with like toys, and then they're showing them different scents with Q-tips, and they're thinking that this is going to provide the same amount of stimulation as they would get just spending a little more time outside in nature. And it's so far away from the benefits that a dog gets from being outside in nature. That I hope nobody actually falls for the idea that you're replacing it. It's not a replacement.
We look at us humans as well. We also we get our stimulation from what? From virtual reality, iPads, iPods, whatever. We love nature. We love to watch nature on National Geographic and the Discovery Channel. But people don't go out. People don't even interact with one another anymore. Now dating is dating online. We are going completely crazy in my mind with the substitution of reality for virtual reality in our world, and we are giving that to our dogs, which is, even when you think about that, it's even more crazy from the dog's point of view.
Yes.
There are apps for cats to be stimulated. I saw another day someone praising very highly an app to stimulate cats, so that we can see that, hey, come on, let's stop for a while and think about what we're doing.
Yep.
This
and
is
that's
my opinion, my private opinion.
Yes, and that's the exact same problem I have with things like snuffle mats. Not that snuffle mats are not the problem, or any of these food enrichment toys, even the bottle with food stuffed in it. It's if you use that as a way of enriching your dog's experience, fine. But a lot of people are replacing human contact with that. It's like, instead of playing with your dog, here's a toy. And if you are constantly replacing your relationship building with your dog with enrichment and thinking that's a good substitute, it is not.
But parents do that with their children as well.
Yeah.
Go watch a movie.
Go play a video game.
For instance, when I made journals about everything in the 70s and in the 80s, okay? And the days that I used the water bottle and the tennis ball more than other days were days where I had less time to give my dogs. The days where I could be out with them and giving them the real thing, I didn't use the water bottle or the tennis ball. So we have to distinguish between what is a substitute and what is the real thing, and not praise the substitute like, wow, now the substitute is the real thing.
All right, let's talk about scent detection, because this was another thing that comes up sometimes. We're talking about enrichment and the foraging. And what are your thoughts on that?
So I've been having to deal with this complaint for a long time, because the majority of my business has been since I started teaching scent detection. I'm regular getting this thing. Oh, my agility teacher says I can't do nose work because it's just going to make them sniff. There's two problems with that. And I noticed this very early on. The people who said that never did any nose work. So they only knew about agility and obedience. So they really didn't have the knowledge base to make that claim. And then the second thing is they have a complete misunderstanding about what scent detection is. Scent detection is not a dog sniffing around. They're not allowed to do that in scent detection. No, you have to sniff for the thing I'm telling you to sniff for. And you have to do it in a prompt manner, not get distracted by a rabbit scent or by a dog pee over here. You have to focus on the one scent. So actually, we have a lot of tools in scent detection to actually fix the problems they're having with their dog sniffing. If they would do scent detection, they could fix those problems. But they're so afraid that nurturing a little bit or giving the dog an outlet for that behavior will make the problem so much worse that you'll lose the dog. It's just not true.
Scent detection dogs and the handlers have much higher discipline than the others. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
It's something that we've come back to time and time again, it seems, when we're having these discussions, is that scent detection is one of the best things you can do with your dogs, right? As far as enrichment and building your relationship, I mean, scent detection is where it's at, right?
Yes.
It really is.
Yes.
Is this or is this not environmental enrichment? We're talking about now bite work.
Bite work, okay.
Think about that. Bite work. What do we think about bite work as far as being enriching for an animal?
Well, from Roger's definition, it's enrichment since it's stimulating the dog's senses and brain.
I don't personally have any opinions.
I participate in bite work myself.
Okay.
And I think when it's done in a particular way, it's great activity for the dog. It engages their body and their senses and obedience and listening to commands and communication. And if done in another way, then it can be very harmful to a dog and make a totally stable, nice dog into a neurotic mess. This is a really controversial idea, which is we need dogs to perform these tasks, whether it's scent detection or protection work, in the real world. And even if it's harmful to the dog's well-being, is it important enough for human society to lower the dog's well-being to do it? So, for example, I know that a lot of dogs, I know that it's not uncommon for dogs who do narcotics and explosives work to have nose cancer problems. That's a stressful work for the dog. Is that worth putting a dog into a life where they basically don't get to be a dog?
Yeah,
I don't know. My instinct is to say get nose cancer, no, but seeing eye dog probably. But
really, bombs. But
I'm basing that on nothing.
These dogs detect bombs that save people's lives.
Yeah, but if we're nose cancering them, then no. But I'm not, like I said, I'm not basing that on a scientific study. That's my professor help.
I think we have to distinguish between the professional work, what we need, professional work, and what we do not need. Of course, it's not natural for dogs to sniff narco and bombs and explosives, but we need them to do that. It's not natural for people to go around and finding drugs and narco and explosives either. But we need some specialists to do that. I mean, it's not common for us to go around and for us humans to go around and beating people up and immobilizing people and all that. We train some special people to do that, law enforcement, because we need it. Unfortunately, we need it because there are some people in our society that don't behave properly, and then we need someone that can take care of that. And we need dogs to do that as well, because the dog can be the best help of a law enforcement officer. Actually, it can be. It's in most legislations you use the dog before you use any weapon, so it's non-lethal, and it's a good solution to solve a problem which could be very dramatic. But that is a necessity again. Okay, it's a necessity. I mean, we do not, in general, we humans, you, me, and Michael, we don't need to have the training of beating someone up or immobilizing someone. You know? And it's not a natural activity for a dog to go around and bite. Dogs very seldom bite. If you see look at stray dogs, for instance, we don't even talk about wolves, coyotes, jackals, or nothing like that. Just dogs, stray dogs, feral dogs. Very seldom they bite. They only bite when they are seriously under attack. And then there is the other bite, which is not aggressive at all. It's the predatory bite when they need to kill, to eat. But it's very seldom that they use their teeth to bite. So it's not, I would say, it's not a natural behavior like you use daily. So my recommendation is, if you are a law enforcement officer, sure, you have to train your dog, and you train it really, really well so that it can perform well. If you're not, I mean, it's for me, I find it unnecessary. If you want to do it as a sport, that's fine. But I mean, we
Well,
have
let
really
me
unnecessary.
push back on you on that a little bit, because I actually believe that everyone should learn to defend themselves. And I'm a big advocate for martial arts training for the general people, not only to learn how to fight, but also to learn how to control your own emotions, how to not be provoked into fighting. Most fights are won by not fighting. But and then I actually think that it extrapolates to dogs quite nicely. It seems to me that there are certain dog breeds that have been specifically bred for a propensity to want to guard things, to want to protect things, to display eagerly aggressive responses, and that these dogs need an outlet, or not an outlet for that behavior, but a control, so that the dog isn't this natural behavior that's been bred into them doesn't just come out whenever it wants.
But I would dispute that the natural behavior has been bred into them, because all dogs can bite. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to have a Rottweiler for your dog to bite someone. You can do it with a dachshund, with a poodle. You know,
Yeah.
you can do it with a cocker spaniel, with whatever dog. Yeah, maybe you want to bite, or are more, or bite harder, or something like that. You know, but I would still say that it's just a quantitative difference, and it doesn't make any difference. Even a Rottweiler. I've had a Rottweiler actually. I never taught that Rottweiler to bite. It was a female. It doesn't matter, but she was big, just to tell you. So you should think, oh, she could be really. I never ever taught her to bite. You know what she could do? She could retrieve an egg. And she was the most wonderful dog in the world. I mean, she was not frustrated at all by not biting or anything. It's not true that dogs need to bite in order to, those breeds need to bite in order to be happy. It's not. It's just
Well,
not.
yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm not saying they need to bite in order to be happy, but I'm saying there are dogs who have such a strong desire to bite. It's not about letting them bite, it's about teaching them to control their bite.
No, I don't think so. I don't believe that. I don't believe
Really?
dogs have such a strong desire to bite. No. Dogs of those breeds. I also have German Shepherds, which are the most common police dog used in the world. And never taught them to bite, and they were never ever frustrated. And I couldn't see that they had a higher tendency to bite or to do anything like that than the others. No, it's in our mind. We think so. It's like breeding. We breed them, we get maybe marginally increasing just a little bit better. And we think that, oh, now we've been breeding them for so many years. Now they're specialists about racing horses. We pay millions for the stallions services to create good racing horses. And if you look at the results of the races from the beginning of 1900 and 100 years later, they are not faster. They are not faster, or only marginally faster in 1999 than they were in 1901. So you're paying millions for what? We think, oh, but these are really race specialists. They're not quicker than otherwise.
Well, we've certainly changed dogs' genetics enough. For example, all dogs point, but pointers have taken that up to a whole other level. You don't think that there's an analogous thing within guarding breeds, that they have a desire to guard things?
No, not with the biting. No, I don't think so. For my experience with those dogs, I don't think so. No, and I've never seen more propensity, unless of course you reinforce that, since they are very small.
Mm.
Not the biting. No.
Very interesting.
Use of the nose, yes. The use of the nose. There are some that show more higher propensity to use the nose than others, but they're not the biting.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into another enrichment topic that could maybe sometimes be a little questionable. Is this, what do we think about? And now this is, I'm sure, definitely environmentally enriching. Barn hunts. barn hunts. Here's some pictures of some barn hunts. So what do we think about this type of enrichment?
Well, you know, it's kind of weird because, and I think Roger would agree with me on this, like, we've had dogs who actively kill rats, you know, because you lived on a farm and I live in rural. And so we've had dogs who actually go into barns, find rats, and kill them. So in some ways, these kind of manufactured barn hunts aren't exactly the same. In terms of the animal welfare concern towards the rat, well trained and socialized, and they run into their tubes very happily, and they sit there while the dog is snarling and barking at them, and they're totally happy. And I've seen rats who are probably terrified of doing that. Most of the people I've been exposed to are very aware of the rat's needs and trade them out regularly. And if the rat doesn't want to go into the tube, they don't make them go into the tube and things like that. I think the dogs need enough of an outlet. This goes to Roger's point. Maybe he doesn't think that they... Is that something like the biting we were just talking about? Do you think that terriers' desire to kill rats is also over-exaggerated? Do you think they not need an outlet for that?
No, look, I never had a terrier, but I had Cocker Spaniels, and I lived in a farm. And at a certain time of the year, we had loads of mice coming from the field. So we were infested. The farmhouse, especially the basement. During those months, I went down with my Cocker Spaniels to hunt for mice. This was environmental enrichment, and it served the purpose as well. The purpose of freeing our house from mice that could be, detrimental for us, for our family. So we had to defend ourselves, kind of. And they were Cocker Spaniels, English Cocker Spaniels, and they and the Pekingese. I even wrote a story. I had the Pekingese.
A Pekingese?
Is this the dog you threw the book at?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Go read that story. It's great. I love it.
That's the Pekingese. And he was amazing. The best of the mice hunters of all. Better than the Spanish, because he could go under places where the Spanish couldn't go. And that was a Pekingese. You never think that, there are things that you cannot take away from them. You say, oh, you remove that, the instinct or whatever from the animal. You don't. You cannot remove those. For me, it's very typical. It's double morality that we have in our society, because when it's for dogs to hunt the rats, you say, oh, it's okay, and the rats don't get stressed at all, and that's fine. I've heard these arguments many times. But if you speak about bullfighting, and there are several variations of the bullfighting. There is the Portuguese bullfighting, for instance. There is no killing the bull, okay? No kill. You don't kill the bull. So it's also enrichment for the bull, actually. Instead of being out doing nothing, it goes out and fights a little bit, substitution for some real life activity. I'm not defending bullfighting. I'm just comparing the two and saying, why is one to be condemned and the other one to be praised?
Yeah. Or another example is like cockfighting. That's another one. It's one of those moral gray areas.
Yes.
And so is it wrong? And so I think part of the thing is we're scared of the human capacity to be fascinated by violence. It's a little scary to us because it's also a natural behavior for humans in a way.
Yes.
And intentionally pitting birds against each other seems like it's morally wrong. And it probably is.
I was going to mention the cockfighting as well. Cockfighting, bullfighting, and now we have the partner hunting, but we seem to defend one and condemn the other a little bit.
Well, the rats aren't getting hurt, right? I mean, there's a difference there. The rats aren't necessarily getting hurt.
There's a bigger difference, which is that the primary purpose of barn hunt is watching the dog find the rat. When the dog finds the rat is then removed. So there's actually no killing. There's no fighting element of it. Is there any frustration? What you see is a lot of dogs actually lose interest because they don't get to fight the rat. They stop even looking for the rats.
One thing I doubt, if you see it from the rat's point of view, I doubt that any rat enjoys the experience.
I agree. I would 100% agree.
True.
Jessica, we can put you in a cage and in the Pacific and the sharks to stimulate sharks.
Hey, people do that.
Oh, I don't know. I might like that. I don't know. I think I might enjoy that.
You think so?
Yeah.
To see 10 sharks going.
As long as I have a good cage and I get pulled back up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think I would. Yeah, I do actually want to do that. Can we do that? I would.
Yeah, we can.
That would be fun. I would like that. Okay, so let me ask you guys a question. My dogs live on land. They have land, and they hunt critters. They generally eat them. If I asked them to not eat them, they would give them to me. But they tend to eat them. And I was showing somebody some pictures one time of my dogs with their birds and the feathers, and it was just like, how could you let them do that? You know, I'm like, I think it's good for them. I think it's natural in behavior.
Sorry, just congratulations. You have good dogs, sane dogs, healthy dogs. If they just kill for kill, that is not natural to kill for kill. When you kill is to eat. So if your dogs kill and eat, that's fine. They are healthy.
Yeah, they kill and eat.
Whether we like it or not. We don't want those things. We want to control everything that has to do with violence. Michael was speaking about our fascination for violence. We like violence. We want, barn hunt is okay because we can control it that way. But it's not okay if the dog goes out and catches a bird and kills the bird and eats the bird, which is absolutely natural behavior.
Okay, we're gonna stick with enrichment, but instead of things that are, we're gonna kind of switch a little bit. Maybe things are overstimulating. So when some people would think that they're being enriching with their dog, maybe if the dog goes crazy for the ball and they throw the ball and the dog gets crazier and crazier. This is enrichment, right? But is it necessarily a good enrichment, Professor?
I think the throw and fetch, right?
Yeah, throw and fetch.
Throw and fetch, tug of war, and things like that. They
Yes.
tend to overstimulate the dog. The tug of war and throw and fetch, and it's very. In ethology we have a name for those. We call them vacuum activities leading to nothing. So there is not a beginning, a middle, and an end.
I mean, could we use the word fun? Maybe the dog is having fun. Maybe he's enjoying himself.
I don't know. It depends how you define fun again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't mind you use the word fun, but I'm not sure that there is fun and there is fun. There are many ways of having fun, and some ways are maybe better for you and for your organism than others,
And I get my dogs very aroused, and all of the problems that Roger is mentioning are true. And I think a lot of them come with the repetition of the same thing with no goal. So if it's just chase the tennis ball, which I'll do if I don't have time. It's the same as throwing the kibble in the grass. I don't have time. I'm tired. I need to get my dog's energy out. Just throw the ball. But in my general training, when I'm actually doing it, it's a reinforcer for set behaviors. So the actual activity is the training we're doing. The tug and the ball chase as a reinforcer for those things. And I think in those cases, that's where you keep it safer and you don't have a dog who becomes as neurotic. And I would say the same thing about dog play, personally, which we haven't talked about, because a lot of people use dog play as an enriching activity. But I see that also going out of control very regularly.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a little bit. John, can we bring in Tilda and Roberto? Because I know that they both had some things to say, who are also tutors here at the Ethology Institute. And while they're getting set up, so what do you guys think about, because I know people personally who have dogs that are active breeds, they have energy, and these people need to leave 8 hours a day. So they'll get up in the morning, they'll do the throw, they'll come home in the evening, they'll do the throw. I mean, they don't have a lot of time, but they want to do the best to take care of their dog.
Yes, as Professor mentioned earlier today, one of the highest or the biggest issues for creating problem behavior we see in dogs and other pets is understimulation. And if you do this throwing and fetching and tug and war, then you are getting the dog in a high stress level. That's we don't want either. And then also, if you look at the nature of the dog, the ancestor, the wolf, who spends 8 to 16 hours working, eats 24 hours, trying to find food. When you go hunting, it's not like it gets success every time. For the most of the times, it doesn't get success. And we can use the stimulation plan for the dog, where you let it use its nose and do some problem solving and cooperation skills in order to compensate.
Roberto, you're here with us?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So what are your thoughts on, ball throwing, playing tug?
Yes. First, I just have here very quick comments about some earlier comments, especially about biting. As some of you know, in a canine unit, and I can say that some of the dogs they didn't bite, so they were forced to bite. And we are speaking about German Shepherds and now the Malinois. So we can go, maybe in the future we can go a bit deeper about that subject, because I don't think that all the dogs are, it all, everything will depend. Of course, I will not tell here how we force the biting, because some of you will be very shocked, but I can say that they just have to do, because they are a tool. And if we see the dog is in our society because somehow is useful for us, the day that the dogs are no longer useful, they will disappear. And that's a fact. We see that the dog passes around, at least here, the statistics that we made here in Denmark, an average of 21 hours and 30 minutes. More or less in home. About natural environment, I don't know about you, but it's the pet industry and made a big brainwash about that. And some trainers, they have that opinion that the companion dogs were made to be in home, and with a good bed, especially big beds and a lot of gizmos, as professors say. About tug of war, so I made a question for owners that have puppies between 2 and 5 months that have the tendency to bite clothes or the lid. Of them, 70 play tug of war or similar plays. Only 3 didn't play. And then I did the opposite. Dogs that don't have the tendency to bite clothes or lead or other kind of biting behavior. And in 97 owners, 77 didn't play tug of war. Because we can from here have an idea of the real life and not what we read about these stories. And basically, this is what I have to say for now.
Next time we'll try to set you up with a screen share. If we know you have something to share, we'll plan that a little better next time. Okay, guys. Our last few minutes that we have, there's one other topic I want to touch on really quickly. And it's interesting to me, and it also comes from a debate that Michael and Tilde were having one time. Do you think in order to be enriched, have an enriched life, a dog needs to have dog?
I think that...
We don't have a lot of time, so.
Yeah, I know. I personally think that the relationship between the dog and their human is the most important thing for a dog's well-being. Dog friends can supplement that, but they cannot replace that. And so dog friends that I see often detract from the human-dog relationship.
Okay, and very quickly, let me say exactly the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we cannot substitute what it is to have a dog friend in any way. Need dog friends, absolutely.
Do you think that a dog that lives as a solo dog is enriched? I don't want to use the word happy. Is enriched? I mean, do you think a dog you should have 2 dogs? Or if you have a single dog, do you need to go make him dog friends or her?
You know, to have 1 dog and 2 dogs is very different, because a second dog is not only the double, it's maybe triple or quadruple the work, you know. So it's a completely different thing. But I think that if you don't have two dogs, you should have some friends who have dogs, and you should give those dogs the possibility of regularly interacting, playing, fighting, doing, disagreeing, agreeing, having a normal life, a normal doggy life, canine life. Yeah. We can be as good as we want, but we will never be a substitute for a real dog towards another dog.
Interesting.
That is my opinion.
Tilde, did you want to jump in? Did you have anything to say about dog friends?
Yes, I completely agree with the professor, and it's nature, and the same for a few humans. Even I love animals very much, but we will always. I remember actually, Professor said that once, that we would always miss something if we are not having contact with someone from our own species, of our own species.
Interesting, because I don't know where I stand, and it doesn't really matter, but I know I've been taught by a lot of people that would be in the same vein as Michael, and that you need to be your dog's best friend, and your dog should be fine relating to you, doesn't necessarily need to be relating to every dog in the neighborhood.
I think the problem is we're imagining that this is a fight between dog friends primarily, or no dog friends, when really are more important and dog friends are less important. I think I don't know if Roger would agree with this or not, but I think you should be your dog's best friend. That doesn't mean they can't have other friends.
No, I agree completely, and I wanted actually to make the same point. If you said if our positions could be switched, because if you try defending the other one, I will go to the other side. So
that's just what you guys do.
and I would like to emphasize one thing here for everybody watching is that look, you've seen here different opinions, Michael, myself, Roberto. When we're speaking about facts, then we cannot disagree, because facts are facts. A philosophical discussion will prove that we can actually disagree, but let's drop that. But when we're speaking about things that require so much like values and impressions and things like that, we can disagree. But the most important for all of you listening is that, look at us. We disagree, but we are good friends. We share a discussion we have here today. We couldn't have it outside. They're out on Facebook or wherever. It would elicit a lot of name calling and bad things.
Indeed, as Michael knows very well.
Yeah.
So I thank you all for being here today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation on enrichment. Bye, guys.